Welcome to Take a Wander with Shebs. My guest at this point is documentary filmmaker and award-winning photographer Bella Falk. Bella, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on. How are you? And where in the world are you currently?
I'm very well, thank you. And I am at home in London.
So just for people who don't know who you are and what you do, just explain a little bit about yourself.
I am a documentary producer-director. I make science and history documentaries for international channels. The last few years, US channels like Discovery and PBS. I'm also, in my spare time between documentary projects, a travel writer and a travel photographer, and I have a travel blog at passportandpixels.com.
I always build it up for our viewers and listeners to sort of understand the person behind where you are right now. Where did the initial love first start for you for travel? And also, what was your ambition growing up? Was it in photography, but what you do now? Was it in filmmaking?
I've always been interested in travel, and I've always been interested in photography. Like when I was very small, I did photography clubs, and I made a dark room in my mum's laundry room. I put bin bags on the windows, and I had a pinhole camera kit, and I was the kid who would bring a camera to school on certain days and take pictures of my friends and that sort of thing. So I've always been into photography as a hobby, since I was quite small. And the travel's the same. I kind of just always loved going to places. When I was lucky that my parents could afford to take us on holidays, so we'd go to places, and obviously they were the best. And I took a gap year after I left school and travelled around South America. And then I studied languages at university. So again, I got to travel, spent 6 months working in Paris and 6 months studying in Granada at the university in Spain.
Was it solo traveling to South America when you took a gap year?
I went on my own, but I went supported. So I went with a project organisation, so there was someone on the ground to help, and there were other people sort of my age doing the similar project. So I kind of had a group of friends ready-made. But when I went to the airport, I didn't know anyone, if you know what I mean. I studied languages, and I kind of thought I wanted to use my languages in some way, which didn't actually happen straight away, because I ended up working at the BBC and doing UK based stuff. But I always at that point thought I wanted to get paid to travel effectively. That was the ambition. I never really, at least when I was a teenager, knew what form that might take. But I was good at English, and obviously I did French for A-level. So I kind of knew it would involve journalism or writing or something of that nature.
Because it's quite interesting, because you've got different dynamics in terms of what you do right now. So there's various different professions you've got. How did the photography stuff come professionally for you?
When I left university, I was always interested in the media, and I did a postgraduate diploma in broadcast journalism, and then I got a job as a trainee at the BBC. So that came about because I had been working as a secretary after I left university, just as a temp secretary at the BBC, which I managed to get because I did a secretarial qualification straight after I finished my A-levels, and then I applied to the BBC to be a temp on their temp pool. Back then, lots of sort of the executives in the BBC had secretaries, which they don't anymore. So I was able to get in there, and then it was just this amazing experience of having access to the top executives in the BBC and seeing what they were doing. And I was just typing letters and and that kind of thing, doing data entry, but it was just such an exciting place to be, and I knew I wanted to work there, and I didn't really know how. I didn't really mind where. I just wanted to be in the BBC. So that's why I did the postgrad. That was a kind of news-based journalism 1 year course, and at the end of that I thought I wanted to become a news reporter, and I thought I had the idea that I would be a foreign correspondent, and go off and chase the stories around the world. And that was what I wanted at that point. But I applied for this trainee scheme, which was in current affairs and factual documentaries, just because it was available. And, you come out of a course and you're like, I'll just apply for everything. And And then I got it, which was amazing because it was extremely competitive. I think 6,000 people entered or tried to apply for 6 places or something like that. So I got on that, and then I was like, well, I can't turn this down. Mm-hmm. So I did that for a year, and once I was obviously inside the BBC, I was never going to leave. So when that year finished, I would just applied for other jobs internally and got them and stayed on for another 6 years. And then the BBC now has sort of changed its system of hiring, for freelancers, and it basically was in the process of trying to make everybody freelance. So they offered quite a generous redundancy package, which I took, and then I spent that money on a professional photography course and my first professional quality camera. And that was kind of where the photography started as a professional thing. Although for a long time, I wasn't making much money. I was selling the occasional photo on image libraries. That's been a very slow process of doing it for the love. But if you do something enough and you kind of, I was entering competitions, which I then won. Then people started to know who I was. Then I started networking and going to events and meeting people. And, that's been a very slow thing. And I've been lucky that because I have the TV, paying the bills, I don't need to do the photography for the money. And so are you
talking about right now or back then? Sorry.
Well, back then as well. I when I left the BBC, I went freelance as a documentary producer. So then I was doing, this was 12 years ago now. I was doing exactly the same as I am now, which is working on contract basis. So production companies will get a commission with a channel. They'll say, okay, we're going to make 6 episodes of whatever this thing is. We need producers. And then I'll get a call. Am I available? Do I want to do it? And those jobs can be anything from a couple of weeks filling in for something, or up to anything to about 6 months if you're taking the whole project from concept to delivery. And then in between, because, you can never line them up, immediately back to back, and you have to wait for the right one, something you want to do or whatever's available. And also after they're very, very intense, those kind of projects, you get to the end, you just sort of fall off a cliff and all you want to do is sleep for a week. So I never want to take another one straight away. And then in those kind of gaps between contracts, that's when I would, focus more on the photography and the blog, and I still do.
Take it back slightly. When you got into this position, because people listening will say it's a very tough industry to get in, and you said there was quite a few thousand people applying for the role. What made you stand out from the crowd, really? And you've obviously got something that someone doesn't have. So what is it that you think you've got that others don't have?
I was very lucky that I was able to travel before I applied. So by the time I applied for that role, I had my gap year. So I had traveled quite a lot in South America. So I had all those life experiences and the confidence that comes with having done that. I think travel is amazing for that kind of personal growth. Then I had my degree. I got a first. So, they always like to look at the numbers. While at school, I did the school newspaper. While at university, I did the student newspaper and the student radio station. And then after I graduated from university, I took another gap year. I went to Ghana and I volunteered in a TV station and a radio station. So I did 6 months, 3 months in the TV station and 3 months in the.
So you had all this background of work and experience beforehand. I think that's where it came.
Yeah. So when you're applying to the BBC, you can clearly demonstrate. I could clearly demonstrate that I had the drive, I had the ambition, I had the passion, I had the experience, and I had the confidence. So if you're just, if I'm competing against people who've just, done their A-levels and their degree, and then they've just come and said, I want to be in telly, they're not going to stand up against me when I can say I went to Ghana and I worked in a radio station.
Someone can't do what you've done and they still want to get into the field. Is there any sort of advice that you'd give them?
You absolutely don't need to go to Ghana. I mean, particularly now with podcasts and websites, and this is a very different world today from how it was when I was growing up, and we didn't have any of that stuff. But obviously, what you have to do is prove that you can do it, and that you don't have to be professional standard, but you have to be able to show the passion and the drive and the determination, and for all of that. So you have your own podcast, have your own website, have your own YouTube channel or TikTok or whatever. All of that stuff. It was kind of similar when I started when I was working at Lonely Planet as a video producer there, and I went to my boss at Lonely Planet and I said, I can take photos and I can write. How do I get to photograph and write for Lonely Planet? And she said, where's the proof? Where's the evidence of what
Mm.
you do? Where's your travel blog? If you haven't got a travel blog, you're not serious. And I said, I better go start a travel blog. And that's why I started my blog. And she was absolutely right. How can anyone believe me, or how can anyone know what you're capable of if you can't show them? So it's exactly the same. If you want to work in TV, get a YouTube channel.
I guess it's a different way of getting into a profession these days.
I don't know if I would succeed now. It was a different time back then. And I think it is still very hard to stand out from the crowd. Everybody's got a YouTube channel, So, I mean, I don't, but, but I think you don't have to necessarily travel across the world to do it. You can find stories in your own area, in your local area. You can, but you need to have that, whatever that is, that kind of instinct, that kind of passion and drive to look for the stories and to create something and to go out and do it and not wait for opportunities to land in your lap, because they absolutely won't. They won't.
But would you say also networking is very key to that? Going to networking events?
I think, for people starting out, I think that's much harder to get access to those kinds of things. Certainly for me, with the photography and the travel writing, networking has been absolutely the thing. Because, if I send a pitch and it lands cold in someone's inbox, they're a lot less likely to read it. And even if they read it, they don't know who I am. So they're less likely to commission me. But because I started entering competitions, and I was very lucky enough to get nominated one year as well. I was a finalist for the Travel Media Awards in Best Photography in 2019. And then in 2020, I won it. So twice I was able to go to the event and meet people. And then I went, for example, this is something that people can do. And in fact, I did it yesterday. I went to a talk given by a photographer. I just go to these things because I'm interested and I want to see how the photographers work, and I want to learn from, people who are doing things differently, and, and I just think they're interesting. And after the talk, everybody left, but I stayed behind and chatted to the photographer and the guy who was organizing the event. Like, you can do that,
Yes.
it requires a bit of confidence, but that's how you network. Turn up to stuff and talk to people, and not everything is invite only. You can go, and the ticket was free. So you do have to be in London for a lot of this stuff.
I don't live in London myself. I'm a London boy, but I don't live in London anymore. I feel as though sometimes I maybe miss out on a lot of stuff. But with virtual meetings now, or virtual events now, webinars, potentially that's opened up the door for others to get in. But do you have to be in the city? Would you say that one thing that you have to be?
I do think it helps. You don't have to be in London. There is, Manchester is now becoming more and more of a media hub, or Glasgow. But I think London still is the main place, and it does help. And I know that that's hard because obviously it's expensive to live in London. It's much, you can go on webinars and learn stuff, but you can't approach the person afterwards.
Yeah.
So that definitely does make it harder. But you can, or you can reach out by email, or it's a lot easier to ignore people though when they send you an email. Right in front of you.
That's true. It's fascinating to hear, because you've done so much and you've won. Congratulations on your awards, by the way. It's to get to that level. I mean, you must have some satisfaction in what you've done, or do you always feel as though you could always improve and do better and become more successful? Or do you see it that way?
Yeah, I'm never satisfied. I'm always reaching for the next thing. So yes, I mean, obviously it's great, and I winning awards is wonderful, and I'm always very happy. Even just to get nominated and be a finalist is amazing. And I sort of when I get to that stage, then I'm normally like, I don't really mind if I win or not, even though obviously it's great to win, because just even being a finalist is really brilliant. But yeah. I'm always reaching for the next thing. So, what's at the moment, for example, it's going to be like, what other publication can I get into, or like, now I want to have a cover story, or that kind of thing. So,
but you've got longevity. You've had so many years in it. How do you keep it fresh? Because there's so much that changes over time. What keeps it going for you? What's the motivation behind your work?
Because there's always new stuff. Like there's 100 countries in the world that I haven't visited yet, and we're not. Anyway, I think the variety is the thing, and that's the beauty of doing what I do, having kind of multiple career streams, is that I'm never bored ever. There's always so many things to do. My problem is more that there's too much choice. Like, do I take this TV job, or do I not? Do I go traveling? If I go traveling, where, because there's just a million places to go.
Well, that's a challenging aspect then, trying to pick and choose what's right for you, because you've got so much experience in these different fields.
I mean, yes, decision making is the hardest thing. It's so hard for me. I'm not a good decision maker, and because I'm on my own, there's nobody else's opinion to consider. So, which is great because I can do what I want, but I want to do everything. So, even just when I was in Guatemala just now, and I had the choices of do I stay in Guatemala longer, or do I go to Nicaragua or Honduras or Costa Rica, or do I come home? All of these, they're all good choices, and they all open up doors to new opportunities. So you don't, any of them takes you down a different road, and it's like, which fork in the road do I take? And I don't know where they're going, but like, how do you choose? I find that really hard.
To get the success you've had in photography as well as filmmaking, you have to focus on one thing and then you have to focus on another. How have you managed that?
I mean, I think they are related. They're very, they're very similar disciplines in terms of, storytelling, for example. It's about dealing with people. It's about being interested in the world. It's about, in telly, obviously it's about the visuals as well. I used to shoot, as a documentary maker, I used to also operate the camera. I don't anymore because it's exhausting, frankly.
Yeah.
And professional cameramen can do it a lot better than I can. But, you're looking for shots and you're looking for angles in exactly the same way. And photo stories, it's about meeting people and talking to people, and it requires very similar skill sets. And I think in a very real way, my photography skills helped improve me as a documentary maker, because I was looking for the shots and I knew how to frame and how to tell a story through imagery. And then also the documentary experience has definitely helped me as a photographer and a travel writer. So I think maybe that's why I can do both.
When you travel to a lot of these places now, what is it that you look for when it comes to your travels? So people who have not seen you travel before or seen your work, what is it specifically that you look for?
Now it's a combination mainly of two things, which is, where do I feel a kind of hankering for going? And there are certain places that I have on my list that have always intrigued me, or have sounded like a place that I would love. I love nature, the outdoors, adventure and wildlife. So places where I can go and see wildlife are kind of top hitters for me. I really, really want to go to Botswana and Namibia, for example, because they just seem like really photogenic places. I think it's photogenic places actually that's the main draw for me. I mean, anywhere can be photogenic, but there are certain places in the world that where the light is beautiful. I mean, I went to Antarctica. I was very fortunate to go to Antarctica just before the pandemic, and clearly that's a place where everywhere you turn there's another beautiful photograph. So that's kind of the main attraction for me, really, and that's why I went to Guatemala, because I kind of had seen some imagery, the colors and the people and the that kind of stuff. I just really wanted to take my camera and photograph, and also because it's a bit of a more unique destination.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to be able to intrigue people with photographs if they've seen it. If I go to Paris, everybody's like, well, to Paris. I want to go to off the beaten track places, or places that are surprising, so that people will be interested to see my photos.
You are a freelancer. You have to pitch a lot of these times. With your success, I'm sure people will look at you and look at your emails, but someone who's new to the sector and they're trying to pitch to editors, what advice would you give them? Funnily
enough, I actually, I'm still learning about pitching, and I just listened to a seminar about pitching, a guide, pitching tips, which is really, you have to be familiar with the publication that you're pitching to, because, there's no point in pitching something that either that they've just published last week, or that they, would never run. So what I tend to do is, I've come back from Guatemala with loads of ideas and 12,000 photographs, and I'm now in the process of looking at the websites or the hard copies of, the publications that I would like to pitch to, seeing what they've done recently, seeing what they typically do, and then trying to mold the content that I have to fit, the stuff that they would publish. And then it's about, getting your idea, into a simple short paragraph with a headline. You've got to make that they're all very, very busy. Mm-hmm. So you've got to make their lives as easy as possible. You've got to do as much of the work for them as you possibly can, so that they can just see immediately what it is that you're offering, and almost be like, right, I can just copy and paste that straight straight in, then it's less work for them. So a nice headline, a nice catchy kind of pitch. And if you've never pitched before, they don't know you. You've got to make your pitch really engaging, because that's effectively a sample of your writing. Or, with photography, it's slightly different, but more and more, they're going to want you to write, at the very least, captions for the photo.
Yeah.
So you do need to be able to sell your story in writing, even if at the end of the day, it's about the photography more.
Would an idea maybe also pitch before you go? Is that an option? Or do you just go to the places and then pitch to see if anyone's interested?
I did pitch before I went. And you can, if you're unknown, they're never going to commission you, before you go. That's the sort of thing that that's similarly, you were asking about ambitions, and that would be my next ambition, is to get the commission before I go, because I'm still only getting commissions after I get back and I can be like, look, here are the pictures. So that would be the next step for me. You can pitch before you go, and you can let them know that you're going, and maybe, they will give you a steer about the sorts of things that they might be interested in, so that you can focus. So, for example, when I went to Guatemala, I had been in touch with National Geographic Traveler before I went. We'd had a conversation about the sorts of things that they might be interested in. So I knew where to, focus my attention. So I wasn't wasting my time photographing something they were never going to commission. But they wouldn't confirm the commission until I'd sent 400 images. And
it's a tough field. It sounds like you're doing a brilliant job. I'm sure there's going to be more success coming along the way. Before I move on to the last segment, the film documentary stuff, where do you want to take that to?
I'm a contractor. I quite often compare it to having an extension built on your house, or having a house built. I'm the project manager of the building, and then I'll work with the workmen to create the building. Is effectively how it is.
Would you like your own production company within the filmmaking? Is that an ambition?
That sounds far too much stress and hard work. I mean, with TV, I'm really very happy with where I am at the moment. Actually, I have, the next stage for me. I'm a producer director, so if I wanted to, the next rung up the ladder would be to be a series producer or an executive producer. But those roles don't involve being at the coalface. Once you move away from being a producer director, you're a manager. I mean, you have a lot of creative input in the design of the show, but you're not going up to the locations, and you're not working with the crews, and you're not meeting the contributors. And that's the bit that I love, is the travel. And so, from people at my sort of level in my career, I've been in telly for 18 years now. Most of my kind of cohort of people that I grew up with, they're all series producers, executive producers, or channel commissioners now. And I'm earning less than them, but I don't want to move up, because I like the creativity, and I like the travel.
I know you said you're not where they are, but what you're doing, it sounds like you're very, very happy with your life.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to do what they're doing. I mean, a lot of people do it because, after a time you get married, you have kids, you can't be traveling all the time, have home responsibilities, and that, you need a more of a desk-based position. But I don't have that. I don't have any of those encumbrances as I see them. So I've got the freedom to keep going. And I mean, really just the stuff I've been doing for the last few years, I've been doing history, science, archaeology programs. I get to work with some really interesting people. I get to go to some really interesting places. I'm genuinely, so when I do take a project, I don't really do any of the other stuff. I'm just really focused on learning everything I can about the subject, and I can work hours and hours and hours and not even notice, because I just really interested in it, and I want to make the best program. When it's your name, at the top of the credits, it feels like a huge responsibility to not only do the best that you can do, but also do justice to the people whose story you're telling. So I tend to just do nothing but work, but I love it. So
where would you say one place that really transformed your life in terms of travel?
That's a hard one. I mean, nowhere has transformed my life. But I feel like the places where I've spent a longer period of time, where you can really get stuck in. I think Uganda was a big turning point for me. I went in 2018 for 3.5 months, similarly, to volunteer. I was volunteering as a sort of videographer and photographer for a charity in Kampala, and that was when I kind of really had the time to invest in the blog and the photography. And so it took a lot of time to do photography there, and having 3 months to really get to know the place. When I came back, I wrote, I've written probably 30 blog posts about Uganda, and I was able to work with the Ugandan Tourism Board while I was there. And I think, I'm not sure if some of the awards that I've won have been because of photos from Uganda, but certainly some of my content from Uganda has been published in other publications. So I think that, from a blogging perspective, was the kind of the trip that really raised the blog from just a kind of hobby level to something where people would start to take me seriously.
I really admire the longevity that you've had, and you've kept it going. It's quite inspiring to hear your story. So thank you for telling us.
Thanks,
before I let you go, just tell everybody where they can find you and view all your work.
My blog is called passportandpixels.com. So you can Google Passport and Pixels and it'll pop up. I'm on Instagram at Passport and Pixels, AND, and Twitter at Passport and Pix, just PIX, because it was too long otherwise. And if you go on Instagram, there's also a link tree, one of those link tree things with loads of links. So you can see some of my most recent documentary projects. I think you may need to be in the UK to be able to watch some of them. But yeah.
Well, Bella, I wish you all the best for the future. Thank you so much for coming on, and I'll speak to you very soon.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell button to never miss an episode, and follow me on all of my social media platforms. That's it for Taking One Those Chefs. Hope to see you all soon. Until next time, bye for now.